The sound of shattered glass echoed through the luxurious Kong Corporation mansion. "Do you call this work?" Kong Daehyun's cold voice sliced through the air. His sharp eyes glared at the trembling house staff, who bowed low, begging for forgiveness. A single teacup had been chipped, and to him it was an unforgivable mistake. The mansion fell silent whenever he entered. His presence was heavier than thunder, colder than the first snow of winter. He was the CEO everyone feared, ruthless in the office, merciless at home. He never smiled, never softened. Not once. Melissa Johnson, a 26-year-old maid from Kenya, stood quietly in the corner, clutching her broom. Her dark skin glistened faintly under the mansion lights, and her soft eyes lowered as though afraid to meet his. She never spoke out of turn, never argued like the others. She was a shadow in the grand house, silent and invisible. But what no one knew was that Melissa had a secret joy. Each time it rained, she found excuses to slip outside, sometimes to fetch laundry, sometimes to carry groceries. When the sky poured, she felt alive. The raindrops on her skin reminded her of home, of Nairobi afternoons when she and her siblings would dance barefoot in the muddy streets, laughing until their mother called them back inside. Here in Korea, surrounded by arrogance and coldness, the rain was the only thing that still made her heart dance. That night, when the staff retreated to their quarters, Melissa remained behind. She picked up the groceries that had been left at the doorstep, her uniform damp from the drizzle. As she stepped into the garden to carry them inside, the drizzle turned into a full downpour. She froze for a moment, then she smiled. Carefully placing the groceries aside, Melissa spread her arms wide and tilted her face up toward the sky. The rain drenched her hair, soaked her uniform, but she didn't care. Her feet moved softly, twirling and stepping on the wet grass. She began to dance. Slow at first, then freer, her body swaying like she was in another world. For the first time all day, Melissa's laughter broke the silence of the mansion grounds. It was soft, sweet, and real. She thought no one could see her. But Kang Daehyun had just returned from a late-night meeting. He sat in the back of his sleek black car, scrolling through business reports, his face as blank as ever. When the driver turned into the mansion gates, the headlights caught Melissa in the rain. First, he frowned. Who would dare be so careless on his property? But as his eyes focused, his breath caught. There she was, the quiet maid who never spoke, never asked for anything, moving like a free spirit under the storm. The rain clung to her, her soaked uniform outlining her figure, but it wasn't her beauty alone that struck him. It was the joy, the unshaken, innocent joy of someone who had nothing, yet carried everything inside her. His chest tightened. Something strange, unfamiliar. "Stop the car," he ordered sharply. The driver obeyed, confused. Daehyun's eyes refused to look away. He had seen women dressed in diamonds, painted with expensive makeup, trained to impress. But none of them had ever made him pause like this maid, spinning barefoot in the rain. He should have gotten out. He should have scolded her for being careless, for acting like a child. But he didn't. He simply sat there, watching. Melissa twirled, then laughed softly to herself. For a brief moment, she looked directly at the mansion windows, her lips whispering something like a prayer. Then, she bowed her head, picked up the groceries, and hurried back inside, her secret dance over. Daehyun leaned back, unsettled. Why was his heart beating fast? Why had her laughter, so light, made his chest feel heavy? "Sir, should I drive in?" the driver asked carefully. "Yes," Daehyun muttered, his voice unusually low. That night, in his vast empty bedroom, the CEO closed his laptop earlier than usual. But sleep didn't come. Each time he shut his eyes, he saw the image of Melissa, her eyes closed, her smile free, her arms wide under the rain. For the first time in years, Kang Daehyun wanted to smile. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because falling for a maid, for someone so far beneath him, that was impossible. Or so he thought. The next morning, the Kang mansion was quiet except for the soft clatter of breakfast preparations. Melissa moved silently through the grand kitchen, arranging trays and polishing silverware. She always worked early, keeping to herself. Unlike the other maids who gossiped, she blended into the background. But today she felt different. Last night's dance still lingered in her chest like a secret flame. She had laughed, she had twirled, and she had felt free. Just for a moment. She thought no one had seen her. She was wrong. From his study upstairs, Kang Dae-hyun leaned on the balcony railing, sipping black coffee. His eyes were sharp, but they weren't scanning business reports. They were on Melissa. He told himself it was coincidence, that he just happened to notice her carrying the trays, that he just happened to pause when she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. But deep down, he knew he was watching her, searching for that spark he'd seen in the rain. Why her? Why now? He shook his head. He was Kang Dae-hyun, the most ruthless CEO in Seoul. His life had no room for distractions, especially not from a maid. But his mind betrayed him, replaying the sound of her laughter over and over like a haunting melody. Sir, Mrs. Park, the head housekeeper, interrupted his thoughts, bowing low. Breakfast is ready. Shall I dismiss the staff? Yes, he said curtly. But as he descended to the dining hall, his eyes flickered, just once, toward Melissa. She didn't notice. Her head was lowered, her hands steady as she placed the silverware. But her calm presence, her silence, made him strangely restless. Later that day, Melissa was in the garden, carefully trimming roses. It was one of her favorite chores, though the thorns often scratched her skin. She hummed quietly, a soft tune from back home in Nairobi. Dae-hyun walked past, phone pressed to his ear. Normally, he ignored all the staff. They were invisible to him. But today, he slowed. His eyes lingered on Melissa's hands, gently cradling the roses despite the cuts on her fingers. Why not wear gloves? He asked suddenly, startling her. Melissa looked up, wide-eyed. It was rare for him to address her directly. Sir, gloves are too heavy for the small stems. My fingers work better. Her voice was soft, respectful. No trace of fear, no trace of boldness. Just simple honesty. Dae-hyun frowned, not at her answer, but at the way her words settled inside him. She was different. She didn't flatter him. She didn't scramble to impress. She simply worked. At lunch, the staff gathered in the servants' hall. Melissa ate quietly, rice and kimchi on her plate. Mrs. Park, however, never liked her silence. You think being quiet makes you special? Mrs. Park hissed. You're no different from the rest. Just a maid. Don't think the CEO notices you. The other maids snickered. Melissa lowered her eyes, swallowing the sting of the words. She didn't respond. But upstairs, Dae-hyun was watching from the staircase. He had come down silently, unseen, and heard every word. His jaw tightened. For reasons he couldn't explain, anger surged in him. Why did it bother him so much to hear Melissa belittled? That evening, Melissa carried fresh towels to the guest wing. She was balancing a basket when suddenly, her foot slipped on the polished floor. The towels scattered, and Melissa winced, holding her ankle. Before she could steady herself, a firm hand caught her arm. It was him, the CEO. Kang Dae-hyun bent slightly, his cold eyes scanning her ankle. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice unusually low. Melissa's heart raced. No one had ever heard concern in his tone before. She shook her head quickly. I'm fine, sir. Thank you. She bent to gather the towels, but he crouched too, picking them up. Their hands brushed for a fleeting second. Melissa froze, her cheeks warming, but he simply placed the towels back in the basket and stood. Be careful, he said, then walked away, his expression unreadable. Melissa remained kneeling on the floor, her heart pounding. That night, in his office, Dae-hyun stared out at the city lights. He should have been reviewing contracts, but his mind was elsewhere. The image of Melissa's smile in the rain returned. Then her hands on the roses. Then her whisper, I'm fine, sir. Why did he care? Why couldn't he forget her? Am I losing my mind? He muttered to himself. Mr. Han, his driver, knocked gently and entered with documents. He noticed the CEO's distracted gaze. Sir, he said carefully, sometimes the heart notices things before the mind allows it. Dae-hyun shot him a sharp look. What do you mean? Mr. Han only bowed, hiding a small smile. Nothing, sir. But he had seen it too, the cracks forming in the CEO's icy heart. Meanwhile, Melissa sat on her small bed in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling. She thought of the moment he had caught her, of his hand steadying her, of the brief gentleness in his eyes. She shook her head quickly, scolding herself. Don't dream, Melissa. You're just a maid. But deep down, her heart had already begun to stir. For the first time in years, Kang Dae-hyun didn't fall asleep thinking about business deals. He fell asleep thinking about a maid who danced in the rain. And this time he smiled in his dreams. The skies above Seoul were heavy with dark clouds, the kind that promised a storm. The mansion staff rushed about, closing windows and securing the garden furniture. No one liked working during storms except Melissa. As she folded laundry on the balcony, she secretly prayed the rain would fall hard. She longed for that quiet joy it always brought her. The mansion was a place of rules and whispers, but the rain was her freedom. The first drops fell light as whispers. Melissa smiled to herself, glancing at the sky. She reached for the laundry basket, but in her heart, she knew she would linger. Thunder rumbled. Rain poured down in sheets. Within seconds, Melissa was soaked. She tried to gather the last of the clothes, but her foot slipped on the wet marble. With a small cry, she stumbled, the basket falling, clothes scattering across the balcony. And then, before she could hit the ground, strong arms caught her. Melissa froze. It was him. Kang Dae-hyun, the CEO, was standing there, rain drenching his perfectly pressed suit. His face was inches from hers, his grip steady on her arms. His usually sharp eyes softened, almost unrecognizable. Careful, he said, his voice low but firm. Do you want to break your neck over laundry? Her lips parted, but no words came. She could barely breathe. The cold CEO who never smiled, never cared, had just saved her. I'm sorry, sir, she whispered, trying to step back. But his grip lingered just a moment longer before he finally released her. The rain pounded harder. Melissa bent quickly to gather the fallen clothes, but Dae-hyun crouched too, his expensive shoes splashing in puddles. Their hands brushed again. This time, neither pulled away instantly. For a heartbeat, the storm disappeared. There was only the two of them, kneeling in the rain, eyes meeting. From the ground floor window, Mrs. Park watched with narrowed eyes. Her lips curled in anger. Unbelievable. That maid, she hissed. She stormed off, already plotting. Inside the balcony, the rain washed down Dae-hyun's face, flattening his hair against his forehead. Melissa risked a glance at him. He didn't look like the ruthless CEO everyone feared. He looked human. When the last piece of laundry was gathered, Melissa stood quickly, bowing low. Thank you, sir. Forgive me for troubling you. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Melissa. Her name on his lips sent a shiver down her spine. He rarely addressed staff by name. She turned slowly. Yes, sir. Dae-hyun hesitated. The words he wanted to say warred with the walls he had built his entire life. You remind me what it means to be alive. But instead, he said coldly, next time, wait until the rain stops before you work outside. Yes, sir, Melissa whispered, bowing again. But her heart beat wildly. Beneath his cold tone, she had seen it. Something in his eyes that betrayed him. Something warm. That night, the mansion buzzed with whispers. The maids gossiped about how the CEO had been seen in the rain with Melissa. He saved her. I heard he touched her hand. Impossible. He doesn't care about anyone. Melissa sat quietly, pretending not to hear. But inside, she trembled. Was it really possible that he noticed her? That he cared? Mrs. Park's voice cut through the chatter. Mark my words, she said, glaring at Melissa. That girl will ruin everything if she thinks she's special. The CEO will never want a maid. The others laughed cruelly, and Melissa lowered her gaze. She wanted to believe them. She should believe them, yet her heart whispered otherwise. Meanwhile, in his office, Kang Dae-hyun was restless. His laptop sat open, unread. His pen tapped against the desk. He had survived betrayals, business wars, and sleepless nights without blinking. But now, a single maid had unsettled his entire world. He remembered the way she looked at the sky, the way she smiled in the rain, the way her voice trembled when she said thank you, sir. He clenched his jaw. Why her? Why now? Mr. Han, the driver, entered quietly with papers. He noticed the untouched work on the desk. Sir, if I may speak freely? Dae-hyun looked up, irritated. What is it? Rain has a way of washing away masks, Mr. Han said gently. Sometimes, it reveals what we've been hiding from ourselves. The CEO stared at him, then scoffed. Nonsense. But when Mr. Han left, Dae-hyun leaned back in his chair, his thoughts spinning. Hiding from myself? Days passed, and rain returned again. This time, Melissa tried to resist. She folded laundry quickly, closed windows, and stayed inside. But when she heard the storm outside, her heart pulled her to the back garden. She stepped out quietly, barefoot, letting the rain fall on her skin. Her body began to move, soft and free, dancing as she always had. She didn't know that upstairs, Dae-hyun stood by the window, watching. His heart thudded in his chest. He had seen countless performances in grand theaters, but nothing compared to the simple beauty of Melissa, twirling barefoot in the rain. He whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, "Why can't I look away?" That night, lying in bed, Melissa clutched the small necklace she always wore, a simple cross her mother had given her. She prayed quietly, "God, please, don't let me fall for what I cannot have." But she already knew it was too late. And in his own room, Kang Dae-hyun turned on his side, sleepless. For the first time in years, his lips curved into a faint smile, a smile no one had ever seen. The rain had brought him something he didn't know he needed, and her name was Melissa. Morning came with a quiet tension that Melissa could feel in the air. She went about her duties carefully, polishing the silver, arranging flowers in the grand hallway, and sweeping the marble floor. But whispers followed her everywhere. The maid stared, giggled, and murmured behind her back. She thinks she's special now. The CEO watched her dance in the rain. Maybe she's trying to seduce him. Melissa kept her head down, pretending not to hear, though her heart ached. She never wanted attention. She only wanted to live quietly, work honestly, and send money home to her family in Kenya. But she didn't know Mrs. Park had been plotting in silence. That afternoon, Mrs. Park carried a silver tray into the CEO's office. She bowed respectfully, but her words dripped with poison. "Sir," she said softly, "I hesitate to say this, but it is my duty as housekeeper. Melissa, she has been acting improperly, dancing in the garden when she should be working, seeking your attention. She's dangerous." Kang Dae-hyun looked up slowly, his sharp eyes unreadable. "Dangerous?" he repeated, his voice low. "Yes," Mrs. Park pressed on. "She's a maid, sir, yet she behaves as though she belongs here. The other staff are unsettled. Perhaps it is best to dismiss her before things get embarrassing." For a long moment, silence filled the office. Then Dae-hyun leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk touching his lips. "Mrs. Park," he said coldly, "since when did dancing in the rain become a crime? Or is it that you are the one unsettled?" Her eyes widened. She stammered, "Yes, sir, I only meant." "Leave," he ordered. His tone was sharp, final. Mrs. Park bowed quickly and left, her pride burning. Rage twisted her heart. So he defends her. Very well. Let's see if he defends her after this. That evening, the storm returned. Dark clouds, rolling thunder, heavy rain lashing against the mansion walls. Melissa finished tidying the dining hall and walked toward the kitchen, humming softly to herself. But suddenly, crash, a vase shattered on the floor. The maids gasped. Mrs. Park stood over the broken pieces, her face twisted in mock shock. "Melissa!" she shouted loudly, so her voice echoed through the hall. "How dare you break the CEO's priceless vase?" Melissa froze, her hands clutching her apron. I didn't. Liar!" Mrs. Park's voice rose. "You're careless, irresponsible. And now you destroy the very things you were hired to protect." The other maids crowded around, watching eagerly. "No, it wasn't me," Melissa whispered, trembling. "I swear, I didn't touch it." "Enough!" Mrs. Park screamed. "You are finished here." At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed. Kang Daehyun appeared at the end of the hall. His gaze swept over the scene. The broken vase, Melissa's pale face, Mrs. Park's pointing finger. "She broke it, sir," Mrs. Park said quickly, bowing low. "I caught her red-handed." Melissa's lips trembled. She wanted to defend herself, but her voice caught in her throat. For the first time since she arrived in Korea, she felt truly helpless. The CEO's eyes narrowed. The maids held their breath, waiting. Would he believe her? Would he dismiss Melissa on the spot? Slowly, he stepped forward. His voice was calm, but each word struck like thunder. "Mrs. Park, you forget one thing." She blinked, confused. "Yes, sir. I do not make judgments based on gossip," Daehyun said coldly. His eyes shifted to Melissa. "And I know she would never lie." The hall fell silent. Gasps rippled among the maids. Melissa's eyes widened in disbelief. He trusted her. Daehyun turned sharply to Mrs. Park. "Clean this mess yourself. You may leave after tonight. You are dismissed." Mrs. Park's face turned red with shock and fury. "But sir, out," he commanded, his tone final. Tears of rage filled her eyes, but she dared not argue further. She stormed away, her footsteps echoing. The maids stared in stunned silence, unable to believe what had just happened. The storm outside grew stronger, rain hammering against the glass windows. Daehyun looked at Melissa, who stood frozen, her breath shaky. "Come with me," he said quietly. She hesitated. "Sir?" But he was already walking toward the garden doors. Something in his voice compelled her to follow. The rain drenched them instantly as they stepped outside. The garden was wild with wind, trees swaying, raindrops like silver needles against the night sky. Melissa hugged herself, shivering. "Sir, you'll catch a cold." But then he turned to her, and for the first time she saw his mask fall completely. "Melissa," he said, his voice low but raw. "All my life I built walls. I lived without smiles, without joy. People see me as cold, arrogant, untouchable. But when I see you," his voice broke slightly, "when I see you dancing in the rain, I feel alive. I can't ignore it anymore." Her lips parted, her heart racing. "Sir." He stepped closer, rain dripping down his face. His hand lifted, brushing a wet curl from her cheek. "I don't care if you're a maid. I don't care what people say. From the moment I saw you in the rain, my heart was no longer mine. It belongs to you." Melissa's tears mixed with raindrops as she whispered, You can't mean that." But his eyes, fierce and sincere, held hers. "I mean every word. I want you, Melissa, not as my maid, as the woman who stole my heart." Thunder roared overhead. For a long moment, neither moved. The rain poured, drowning out the world. Then, slowly, Daehyun leaned in, and under the stormy night sky, he kissed her, deep, desperate, and full of every emotion he had locked away for years. Melissa's hands trembled as they clutched his soaked shirt, her heart surrendering to the truth she could no longer deny. She kissed him back, the rain washing away all fear. It was as though the world had disappeared, leaving only the two of them, an arrogant CEO and a maid who danced in the rain, finally bound by love. From an upstairs window, the maids watched in shock, whispering furiously. He kissed her. The CEO kissed the maid. This will change everything. And deep in the shadows, Mrs. Park clenched her fists, vowing revenge. But for Melissa and Daehyun, there was no turning back. The rain had written their fate.
Hello besties, in this story we learned that true love doesn't recognize class, power or position. Sometimes the smallest simple act, like Melissa's innocent joy in the rain, can melt even the hardest heart. Arrogance, wealth and pride may build walls, but love has the power to break them down. Besties, love comes when you least expect it, and sometimes the purest soul can change the proudest heart. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe and share.